When night falls and sound withdraws, the archive remains. The night is long, the air is still. Only what must continue, continues. The stone mortar sits where it was left, not stored, left. The difference is in the position. A stored object is returned to its designated place with some deliberateness, some act of putting away. This one rests where the last use ended, at the edge of the work surface, angled slightly toward the wall. The pestle lies inside it, settled against the curved interior, touching the stone at 2 points. The angle of the pestle against the mortar is the angle the hand left it at when the work stopped. The stone is cold now. Cold the way stone is always cold at night, cooler than the air around it, the mass of the material releasing its heat slowly and taking a long time to warm when warmth arrives. The stone here is a fine-grained sedimentary rock, dense, resistant to the abrasion of repeated grinding, chosen specifically for these properties across generations of use. The surface that was selected for this work was already smooth when it arrived. It is smoother now. The smoothing happened over many uses. Each grinding session brought the substance being ground into contact with the stone surface, and with the contact came friction, and with the friction came the removal of the smallest and least attached particles from the stone. The grains at the surface that the initial smoothing had left standing slightly proud, that each subsequent use pressed and abraded and finally removed. The surface after 10 years of this is different from the surface after 1 year, and the surface after 1 year is different from the surface when the mortar arrived. What the grinding produced in the stone was not damage. The surface that repeated use created is more suited to the work than the surface that existed before the work began. The stone has been refined by what it was used for. The irregularities worked away, the contact surface more continuous, the friction between the substance being ground and the stone more evenly distributed across the bowl. The mortar has been shaped by the work it received. The shaping is in the smoothness, which is not absence of surface, but a particular surface produced by specific use over specific time. The pestle carries the same record on a smaller surface. The end that contacts the mortar, the working end, the curved face that presses and rolls through the substance being ground, is worn to a finish that was not there when the pestle was made. The original surface was cut, then smoothed to a usable state. The surface now is the surface that emerged from the accumulation of all the grinding since. At the center of the working face, where the contact is most consistent and the pressure most concentrated, the stone is worn further than at the edges, where the contact is intermittent. The wear pattern maps the motion that produced it, the center of the rolling pressure, the range of the hand's movement, the angle at which the grinding was done. The mortar and the pestle have been in contact many thousands of times. Each contact left the surface marginally different from what it was before. None of these differences were individually perceptible. Together, they are the finish that is here now. A surface that the material reached through use rather than through manufacture. A smoothness that belongs specifically to this mortar, this pestle, this history of work. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. in the drawers along the wall, the dried roots are in their sections. Each root arrived here as a living structure, a plant organ built for the transport and storage of water and the compounds the plant required. The interior organized into bundles of conducting tissue surrounded by storage tissue, the whole thing filled with the water that the living plant maintained in its cells and the spaces between them. The living root had a texture determined by this water, flexible, slightly yielding under pressure, the cells turgid with what they held. The drying removed the water, not quickly, not all at once. The drying took days or weeks under controlled conditions, the water leaving the tissue gradually, the cells losing their turgor as the water content dropped, the tissue consolidating around the conducting bundles as the storage cells shrank. What the drying left was the structure of the root without the water that had filled it. The cell walls still in their positions, the conducting bundles still running their length, the geometry of the tissue preserved in the rigid form that the dried walls maintain against each other. The root is a record of the plant that made it, the diameter of the conducting bundles, the thickness of the cell walls, the proportion of storage tissue to conducting tissue. These are properties the plant established as it grew, determined by the conditions of the soil and the season, and the age of the plant at harvest. A root grown in poor soil has different tissue proportions from a root grown in rich soil. A root harvested young has thinner cell walls than a root harvested after several years. The dried root carries these differences in its structure. Fixed at the moment the drying stopped, the changes that living would have continued. The water that made the root flexible is gone. What remains is the structure the water held open while it was present, the geometry of the tissue that the living plant maintained with its water, now maintained by the rigidity of the dried walls themselves. The cell walls that were under tension from the water inside them are now in a different state, compressed together, the spaces between them closed. The structure that was held open by pressure now held in form by contact. The root is brittle where it was once flexible. The shape is the same. The substance that gave the shape its character has been absent since the drying. Break a dried root and look at the cross-section. The conducting bundles are visible as a ring or a pattern in the center of the break face. Denser, more fibrous than the storage tissue around them. Slightly different in color where the cell walls of the conducting tissue are thicker. The storage tissue around them is paler, the cells larger and less dense. The break face is a cross-section of the root's interior. The geography of the tissue revealed at the plane of fracture. The organization that the plant established present in the arrangement of what remains. The plant that grew this root is gone. The organization the plant built is here, in the dried tissue, in the arrangement of the bundles and the cells that the drying fixed in position. The root in this drawer is not what the plant was. It is what the plant built, held in the form the drying preserved, the living structure carried forward in the dead one at the scale the cell walls maintain. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The drawers are wood. each one has been opened and closed many thousands of times, pulled out to reach the contents, pushed back when the contents were no longer needed, the motion the same each time, the surfaces in contact through each motion the same surfaces, the sides of the drawer against the sides of the cabinet frame, the front face of the drawer against the air of the room, the interior of the drawer against the contents and the air above them. The wood of these drawers is not the same wood it was when the cabinet was made. It has absorbed what the room has held and what the drawers have held. The compounds that the dried roots release into the air, the volatile fractions that leave the surface of the dried tissue and enter the air of the enclosed space, the air that is replaced each time a drawer is opened, and that carries the volatile compounds with it when it enters the drawer space and carries them away when it leaves. Over many years, the wood has received more of these compounds than it has released. What did not depart with the leaving air stayed in the wood, absorbed into the porous structure of the grain, accumulated over the years of use. The drawer does not smell. The drawer releases compounds into the air of the room, but the release is too slow and the concentration too low for the word smell to apply with any precision. What is in the air of this room at this hour is a quality below the threshold of identification, a character that the air carries, because the wood carries what the years deposited in it, because the wood and the air at the surface of the wood are in continuous exchange, the wood giving up a fraction of what it holds to the air that touches it, the air receiving what the wood releases at the rate the temperature and the concentration gradient allow. The air is not being scented by the drawer. The air is drawing from the wood what the wood holds in excess of what the air holds. The direction of the exchange is determined by the difference between the concentration of the volatile compounds in the wood and the concentration in the air. The wood has more. The air takes the difference slowly, the wood releasing what the gradient requires, the air moving away carrying what it received, new air arriving at the surface to continue the exchange. The drawer that holds the licorice root has given more to the air than the drawer that holds the peony root, not because licorice releases more readily, because the licorice drawer is older, has held its contents longer, has had more years of exchange between its wood and the volatile fractions of what it contained. The wood of the older drawer holds more. It releases more in proportion to what it holds. Both drawers are releasing tonight, both in exchange with the same air of the same room, each releasing at the rate its own history has set. The wood does not know what it absorbed. It holds what the years of contact deposited and releases what the concentration gradient requires, and the result in the air of this room is the accumulated history of what has been stored here, rendered as the current state of every surface that has been in contact with every substance this room has held. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. The air in this room tonight is dry, not as a condition imposed from outside, as the state the air has reached through the night's cooling, the temperature dropping, and with it the air's capacity to hold moisture, the relative humidity rising as the capacity falls, the air holding the same absolute amount of moisture, but holding it now at a higher proportion of what is possible at this temperature. The dryness is the night's own product. This air touches the surfaces in the room at the rate the ventilation allows. Slowly, at night, with no door opening to refresh it, the exchange between the room's air and the outside air reduced to whatever passes through the gaps in the structure. The air that has been in this room since the last person left has been in contact with the stone, with the wood, with the dried roots in the drawers, for the hours since the room closed. At the surface of each dried root, an exchange is occurring. The root holds more moisture than the dry night air. The gradient runs from the root outward, from the interior of the tissue, through the cell walls, to the surface, into the air. The moisture moves along this gradient slowly, at the rate that the dried cell walls permit, the bound water in the tissue releasing at the margin where the tissue surface meets the air. The amount that moves in one night is not measurable by any instrument kept in this room. Over many nights, over the years this root has been in this drawer, the total is present in the root's current weight, which is less than the weight it had when it arrived. The root is drier than it was, not by any amount that changes what the root is for, not by any degree that affects the properties preserved in the dried tissue, by the fraction that the accumulated nights have removed, added to the fraction the drying itself left, approaching a state of equilibrium with the air of this room that the root has not reached and will not reach as long as the air remains as dry as it is tonight. The stone mortar holds nothing at its surface that is not stone. Whatever was ground in it last was ground hours ago, and the residue that remained on the stone after the work, the fine particles that the grinding produced and that did not brush away cleanly, has been in contact with the air since then. The volatile fractions of the ground substance leaving the stone surface and entering the air, the non-volatile residue remaining on the stone in amounts too small to see. The stone surface is close to itself at this hour, closer than it was at the end of the grinding, the air having taken what it could take from what the work left on the stone. The stone is cold, and the stone is smooth, and the stone is what the accumulated grinding produced from the stone that arrived here before the grinding began. In the closed room, in the dry night air, none of this changes. The smoothness will be the smoothness it is now when the work resumes. The mortar will receive what the morning brings and will be, in the receiving, changed by the same fraction. It has been changed by every previous use, incrementally in the direction the grinding takes it, toward a finish that the work produces and that the work alone determines. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. Before the light comes, the room holds its night state. The mortar at the edge of the work surface, the pestle settled inside it, the drawers closed, each one holding what it has always held, the wood of each releasing into the still air what the concentration gradient requires, the roots in their sections, each one at the moisture level that last night and all the nights before it have brought it to. The exchanges that are occurring are not events. They have no beginning that this night produced, and no end that this night will produce. The wood has been releasing since the volatile compounds first accumulated in it. The roots have been losing moisture since the drying was complete. The stone has been accumulating the smoothness that grinding produces since the first grinding. These are states in motion, not processes with a start and a finish, but the continuous condition of materials in contact with each other and with the air that moves among them. The air in the drawer that holds the licorice root has more in it than the air in the room. More of what the wood releases, more of what the root surface gives up, the concentration higher in the enclosed space than in the larger room. The drawer a small atmosphere of its own in which the exchanges between wood and air and dry tissue proceed at concentrations the open room does not sustain. When the drawer is opened in the morning, this accumulated air will move into the room, and the room's air will replace it, and the drawer will begin again from the concentration the room's air carries. The drawer is closed now. The exchange is continuing in the enclosed space, the wood releasing, the root giving up its moisture at the gradient the dry air maintains, the air inside the drawer receiving both, the concentration rising toward the equilibrium that the wood's content and the root's moisture and the volume of the closed space together determine. The equilibrium has not been reached. It will not be reached before the drawer is opened. The pestle has not moved since the work ended. It rests in the mortar at the angle the hand left it. The curved working face in contact with the mortar at the 2 points the angle produces, the stone touching the stone, the surfaces that have been in contact many thousands of times in contact now, without the motion that their contact usually accompanies. The two stones are cooling toward the same temperature, the small difference between them diminishing through the night toward the temperature the room holds before dawn. From the roots in the closed drawer, moisture continues to move into the air. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between breaths, the air holds its density. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. When night falls, the archive remains,